Okay, I'm going to go through chapter 8 now and show you how we approach what's called form, or what something is. Now, most of you are already pretty familiar with form as the parts of speech. Things like nouns and adjectives and prepositions you've heard of, and yeah, well, maybe a good sense of what a noun is and maybe a vague sense of what an adjective isn't. Um, we're going to go over these again just to make sure these are solid. But again, most of you guys are familiar with this. What I'm going to do is something a little bit different and how we approach it. So we're going to actually just cover 6 parts of speech, and those are going to be it. Now, you can, when you approach English, you can chop it up into 6 parts of speech like we're going to do here, or you could take the approach that they took in the comprehensive grammar of the English language and chop it up into 24 parts of speech. It's very important to know that the number of parts of speech is entirely arbitrary. You have to decide based on what kind of system you want to do to. So I really have put together what would be a simplified system and tried to put things in a way that you can use most effectively while you're writing. Okay, so I'm going to do 6 parts of speech, but I'm then going to organize it on 3 different levels. So we could do 24, but I just wanted to cover 6, and that will cover us for the entirety of the grammar lessons. And we're going to do it and understand it at 3 different levels, because that is really how your mind works with language. That's how I think it is. And I think that's the simplest way to do it and the most effective way to do it while you're writing, okay? So we're going to do 6 parts of speech at 3 different levels. Now those 6 and 3s, those are right here. And most of you know about nouns and verbs, but understand this about them. They are essential to thinking, speaking, and writing. Every single language on the earth right now, and I think there's about 3,000, maybe 3,002 languages on earth, every single one of them has nouns and verbs. Not every language has adjectives and adverbs. In fact, many languages just put them into one big glob. So English has nouns and verbs, and those are the core of the language, okay? They're essential. Those are the level that you work at, especially in the early draft stages. When you're thinking up your ideas and trying to explain things, you're working at the level of nouns and verbs. That's the core stuff of thought. Adjectives and adverbs, and again, I do know that most people get these a little bit confused, and that's okay. These add detail and precision to your nouns and verbs. They flesh things out, they give more detail, they explain how it works and things like that. Notice that they're not essential to thinking. They really aren't, and they're not essential to speaking or writing. They're just not. Absolutely essential are nouns and verbs, but adjectives and adverbs provide the detail and the precision that are absolutely necessary. They don't have to be there. You can be functional in English and not know your adjectives and adverbs. But if you're going to be clear and effective and precise, you've got to have a handle on how to use your adjectives and adverbs. And that's a lot of what this book does. You're not going to learn how to write like a 3rd grader or a 2nd grader or even a 1st grader. We're learning to write in a more advanced way because you want to achieve something academically and professionally, because you can write effectively. So you can write in a detailed and precise manner. And so a lot of what you're going to learn in this book is how to use adjectives and adverbs to explain and provide detail to your nouns and verbs, okay? And prepositions and conjunctions are really, they're kind of odd words. When I tell people this, they go, oh, then I don't need to learn them. They mean almost nothing. Words like of, or since, if, or of, notice that they don't really mean anything. But if you say nouns and verbs, run, dog, jump, over, 12, those things mean things. Those are solid in your mind. But words like of and if and through and when and all this other stuff, or even though, those are vague. But what they do is they organize your thoughts and ideas. That's what they do. They put it together in an elegant way and in a manner that is more effective and more precise and more detailed. You'll notice if you pick up a children's book, there's almost no prepositions and conjunctions. It's all solid nouns and verbs with some adjectives and adverbs thrown in. That's what it is. There's nothing wrong with that. but it's dealing with a level of complexity that you are far beyond. So you need to know how to use prepositions and conjunctions in order to write effectively. Okay, so let me start off a little bit. So we're going to work through these 3 different levels. Okay, the first thing is, and how I came up with the 6, is I simplified things. I threw a lot of stuff into other categories. Into the noun category, I stuffed a lot of things like pronouns and gerunds. Pronouns you know already. Those are he, she, theys. But very important to know, in standard written English when you're writing, you usually name your stuff. So I thought about that and I said, you know what, let's put pronouns in with nouns because they basically operate almost the same. He does what Dougie does. They do what, Susie, Betsy and Jenny do. They operate like nouns, okay? Gerunds are a little bit tricky. Gerunds are ing words, like jumping, throwing, cleaning. Those are ing words. Those can be nouns. Where many people get confused is they think ing words are always verbs. They are not. They can be activities. I could say cooking an egg takes 5 minutes. Cooking in that sentence is a gerund. It's an activity. Takes is the verb. So be careful with gerunds. Gerunds, I find that once students understand them, they use them like crazy and they're great. So they are activities, things you can undertake. And when you grammatically deal with them, they operate just like nouns. That's because they're activities, okay? So I put in the noun category nouns because nouns are nouns, but I also put pronouns in there. And then I put gerunds in there. Those are activities. They all are essentially nouns when you put them to work in your sentence. The next part of speech we deal with, and so I go through pronouns, and I even have a little bit on gerunds, the verby noun. It looks like a verb, but it's not. It's still a noun. Is verbs. Now, this is a little bit tricky because for most of you, verbs are actions. That is half right and totally wrong. Verbs can be either action verbs or they can be linking verbs. And linking verbs are not actions. It's very important to understand that. It's very easy to teach actions as verbs. Everybody gets that. You understood that when you first learned about grammar back in 5th grade. But linking verbs you've probably heard of, and maybe somebody's shown it to you and you almost always forgot about it. What linking verbs do is they set up an A equals B situation. If I say Sammy is happy, she didn't go happying. What I did was Sammy equals happy. A equals B. It's really a mathematical formula behind it. A equals B. This equals that. You are describing your subject or this other noun. What you're doing is making one noun describe another noun. This book is blue. This book is heavy. The book is not doing anything. I'm describing it either with another noun or another adjective. So all verbs ultimately are either action verbs or they are linking verbs. There's only 2 kinds of verbs in the world, but there are 2 kinds. And when you have a linking verb, you do not have an action. Okay, so that's what I want you to understand about verbs, is that there are 2 kinds, either action or linking. What this small section on infinitive forms of verbs, it tells you that to jump, to feel, to do, all verbs, either action or linking, have an infinitive form. This is a neutral form. Infinitive as a title refers to the fact that there's no finite subject in it. It doesn't mean it's expanding forever. This neutral form, all action verbs and all linking verbs have the neutral form. That once it's in the neutral form, it's really going to act like a noun. You get really in the end an infinitive, which in the end is just like a gerund. It's a noun in the end. So understand all these verbs actually come in a package that makes them in nouns. That's how they're shown to you. Is that confusing? Yes. That's why I put them on the same level, because nouns can become verbs and verbs can become nouns. And that's the stuff of thought. These two parts of speech are really closer together than they may have appeared. Nouns and verbs actually blend into each other. And the infinitive form is just a noun form of a verb. That's what it is, okay? Um, and those are all action verbs to jump to, again, those, everybody understands that. The linking form is Susie was cold. Notice she didn't go out colding. I'm describing Susie. George looked good in his new suit and tie. Notice I'm not talking about what George was looking at. I'm talking the way he appeared. George looked good. That's A equals B. You want him to be known as good. You want good to describe to that. The cheese smelled magnificent. Even though that seems a lot like an action verb, but think about it. Did the cheese go out and smell anything? No, it didn't. You're describing it. These are often referred to as state of being verbs. You're describing how it is. And oftentimes, not always, you can put is in there, or a form of the verb to be, is, am, is, are, was, is, in the place of a linking verb, and it will still work. And those are the linking verbs: to feel, to taste, to remain, to sound, to appear, to stay, to look, to get, to prove. Those are all the linking verbs. It's very important to understand that these could either be action or they can be linking, or they cannot be both at the same time. You have to check if the logic of the verb is A equals B to know. If I said that that music sounds wonderful, the music isn't doing anything. I want you to understand the music is wonderful. Okay, if I said, she looks really nice in that outfit today, I'm not talking about she's looking at something. Okay, but if I say, look at the car going down the street, I want you to look at it. That's an action. So think through these verbs, because these are very common. Are you describing something, or are you doing something? These are the only linking verbs you can get. And so if you have one of these, it might be a linking or it might be an action. Think about it when you have it, if you're doing an A equals B setup, or are you doing something? Okay, if you're doing something, you have an action. If you're just doing an A equals B thing, you have a linking. No actions in a linking verb. Okay, and the other aspect of a verb I want you to understand is the helping verb. The helping verb helps out either an action verb or it helps out a linking verb. And this is the long list of them. Be, being, been, and all of these are your helping verbs. And we use these all the time, but they're not the main verb. Harvey was betting his house during a poker game with his buddies. Was betting is the full verb. Full verb. Betting is the action verb. Was is the helping verb. So the verb phrase is made out of was betting. So notice that idea of a phrase works together as a single unit. Harvey is the subject. What was he doing? He was betting. Notice that phrase acts as the verb, that part of speech. So both of them together make the full verb. This is the helping verb. This is the action verb. Together they make a full verb, okay? And that's the verb phrase, okay? So that's what I wanted you to get out of the nouns and verbs section. And the second level is the adjectives and adverbs level, okay? This is level 2. These things, these two parts of speech that almost everybody confuses all the time because, well, they both begin with ad. It's very easy to confuse these, and it's not a big deal if you do, because they both add detail to your sentences. That's what they do, okay? So they flesh things out. They describe it more effectively. They provide precision in your thinking. And so this is very important. They are not grammatically necessary, but they are absolutely essential to getting your meaning across effectively. If you want to write well, you need to have a handle on your adjectives and adverbs to get your ideas across. But it's very important to know, like you just saw with verbs, that you can have a phrase function as an adjective. You can have a phrase function as an adverb. And it's nice to know that it's only really one type of phrase. They're prepositional phrases. They can be either adjectives or they can be adverbs. But adjectives, what they do is they modify nouns. That's all they do. Okay? And they usually, if they're a single word, they come right in front of it, like with blue car. You put blue in front of the noun, car, and you have blue car. Okay, that's nice. You can do it that way. That's how you have with an adjective. It can be a single word, or it can be a prepositional phrase, like the car with the blue paint. With the blue paint describes the car. With doesn't describe it. The doesn't describe it. Blue doesn't describe it. Paint doesn't describe it. It's with the blue paint describes the car. That whole phrase describes that noun that came right before it. Okay? So if it's a single word, it comes in front of it. If it's a prepositional phrase, it comes right after it. Okay? That's what adjectives do. So if you use it in front of the noun, or if you use it as a single word, you use it in front of. If you use it as a phrase, you're going to use it afterward. Okay? And words like my, and our, those are all what are called determiners. I place that in the adjective category. Okay? Just, you don't need to know all of this stuff. Okay? Adverbs primarily modify action verbs. Okay? That's what they do. Okay? So, but there is a list of, and they're almost entirely the ly words. Okay? And you know those. Quickly, happily, and all those kind of stuff. But there are these words, these always, already, well, to, almost. These are the most common adverbs in the English language, and they take that irregular form. So be aware of these. And one of the other aspects you need to know with adverbs is that they can often jump around a sentence. I compare them to your little brother. They can be at the front or they can be at the back. They can jump over here. They can go. Your little brother is always moving around. That's what adverbs can do. They can always jump around in a sentence. I should say they don't always. They often can jump around in a sentence. Now that can be a little bit confusing, but it can be kind of neat too, because it allows you a lot of flexibility that adjectives don't allow. Adjectives must be linked onto their noun. If they're a single word, they must be in front. If they're a phrase, they must be right after their noun. With an adverb, you can have a single word that can move from the front of the sentence, the middle of the sentence, to the end of the sentence. Whatever you think works best. And I really want to emphasize what you think works best. You like it best here or there, whatever you think. That's creating your own style. Adverbs can also be phrases, prepositional phrases. Again, prepositional phrases can function as either adjectives or adverbs. When that phrase is an adverb, like the single word, it can jump from the beginning to the middle to the end, wherever you think it operates best. That's kind of nice because adverbs give you a lot of flexibility in style. And adverbs can either jump in the middle of your verb. Was barking, the dog was barking at the neighbor's horse. Was barking is your full verb. Notice the adverb can jump right in the middle, or it can jump to the end of the sentence. The dog was barking at the neighbor's horse already. The dog was already barking at the neighbor's horse. Already, the dog, you can see that adverb can jump all around. It's up to you. What do you think works best? Okay, so that's the difference on adverbs and adjectives are easy to confuse, or excuse me, adjectives and adverbs are easy to confuse. But with an adjective, it's going to stay put, either as a single word in front or a phrase after. With an adverb, it can jump around. Okay. The last section is on prepositions and conjunctions. Now, be careful with these because they're really very useful. Prepositions are all these types of words, and you've seen these before. Onto, outside, down, among. But notice that they don't really mean as much as jump, throw, dog, cat. They don't mean as much. But what they do is they provide the glue and the tape to stick things together. That's what they do. Okay. Same thing with conjunctions. They're going to stick things together. If you can use these really well, you're going to be writing extremely well. That's what they do. You have to understand their purpose is to stick things together. And so the thing I want you to first get used to is the idea that whenever you have a preposition, you are going to have a prepositional phrase. In 3 days is a simple prepositional phrase. In doesn't mean like inside of a box or in like this. It doesn't mean that at all. It's really setting up, you want to connect the idea of days onto this sentence, whatever. In allows you to do it. It's the tape that allows you to attach it. Over the fence, it allows you to attach fence onto your sentence with over. It's the tape that allows you to conjunct them. With Jenny, it's not about with, it's about Jenny, but you've got to have with there in order to put that together. Of baseball, past the Joneses out, underneath, those are all what are called prepositional phrases. So they make, and once you make one, you now have an adjective or an adverb. So that's what they create. Prepositions create prepositional phrases, and those allow you to create adjectives and adverbs to create more detail in your writing. That's what they do. It's pretty neat. Okay. But don't confuse it with an, and the. So don't. Over the bridge is a prepositional phrase. A beautiful bicycle is a noun phrase. Okay. So many people get those confused. Okay. And this last little bit are conjunctions. And, but, and, or, yet, so, nor. Really, you've been taught these before as fanboys. All I want you to really learn is and, but, and, or. You don't need to learn for, yet, so, nor. You're hardly ever going to use those. And in most cases, you don't need them. And, but, and, or are the only real conjunctions I want you to learn. And those stick things together. Those are coordinating conjunctions. And, but, and, or. Okay, those are coordinating conjunctions. But the other type of conjunction, it's a little kind of weird, but you want to get these down. These are called subordinating conjunctions. These are words like after, before, even though, unless, until, when, while. These create what are called dependent clauses, and they join them onto your sentence. So I want you to learn these as conjunctions. They allow you not to stick two words together. What they're going to allow you to do is stick a whole clause, one clause, onto another clause. Once you can do that, your writing ability takes off. It is magnificent. So understanding prepositions is incredibly important for prepositional phrases. And those are probably the most common grammatical structure in any book of any significance. About half a page will be made up of prepositional phrases. So you can understand that they are used to create precision in your writing. Okay, prepositions and prepositional phrases. Subordinating conjunctions are used to create dependent clauses, which is what advanced writers do. Creating clauses like, although he arrived to the church on time, comma, he missed the most important aspect of a meeting with, blah, blah, blah. Until he completes the assignment on electromagnetism, Jeremy will never understand physics. When, since, those things all create, and because those create dependent clauses, you want to know these because those are advanced writing techniques, and you're here to learn reading and writing at an advanced level, understand your prepositions and conjunctions, and you're going to do it. Okay. The last thing I want to point out, oops, we lost that, is to make sure you understand as you go through these parts of speech, you understand that whole phrases and whole clauses, which we'll get to when we get to chapter 16. They can all be these different parts of speech. A noun phrase, something like a simple recipe. Somebody could say that simple is an adjective and recipe is a noun, but I'll tell you right now, that really is a matter of, that's a one thing. In your mind, a simple recipe is the noun. That's what it is. That is a noun phrase. And I'd already mentioned this, a verb phrase is a main verb like walking, but the other verbs like has been, which are helping verbs. Those helping verbs are helping out the action verb, walking. I'll tell you that that is one verb, and it's a phrase. It's a single item. It's a single unit of thought. Okay? And then prepositional phrases are again single units. With olives. That is, if you're going to have your martini with olives, that's an adjective. It's describing the martini. The with olives is describing the martini. The olives isn't doing, the with isn't doing it. The phrase with olives is describing the martini. That's what prepositional phrases do. Gerund phrases, once people understand them, they use them all over the place. They are nouns. If I say skipping rocks, cooking dinner, completing your homework, those are all activities that act in your writing like nouns. Okay. And infinitive phrases are to dine alone, to finish your homework. They work just like gerunds do. We use them usually in the middle of our sentences, right after the verb. With gerund phrases, we can put them as at the front of the sentence, in the middle of the sentence, or at the end. We tend to use infinitive phrases in the middle. It's just an aspect of English that we do. Okay, so that's all of the chapter. That you now have chapter 8 down. Good luck with that, guys. Take care.